Welcome back to the National Hurricane Center. This is Ken Graham. We're in our operations area. Lots of folks, got hurricane specialists, meteorologists on duty. You got folks keeping the equipment running here, keeping an eye on our two tropical storms, both Fred and Grace. Let's start off with the big picture. Look at the satellite. I mean, just really looking as we get this visible picture sweeping across the Atlantic. And there's our first system we're looking at, Tropical Storm Fred. And that's one of the updates. Notice I've been saying the word Tropical Storm Fred instead of the remnants of Fred. So we have seen an increase in the winds, and the hurricane hunters giving us that information. Let's go ahead and look at that closely. So those are the two areas. That's Fred, that's Grace back in this region, and as we zoom in here, you can see some of the data from the hurricane hunters giving us winds, giving us pressure, giving us a real look inside the storm and finding that center and seeing that it's increasing with time. You can see some of the heavy convection right around that center. We expect all of this with Fred to continue to move northward towards the northern Gulf Coast with time. So we'll be watching it real close. And it's interesting, Dennis, I was showing you right before we went on, just to look at this moisture, just a really good demonstration to look at the radar here, because whether we're talking a tropical storm, whether we're talking 5 or 10 miles an hour difference in that wind either direction, that's a lot of moisture, and that we've really got to watch out for that. This is the main area of moisture here, but look well out ahead of Fred, Panama City, Tallahassee. Look at these storms just south of Pensacola. Any one of these could produce gusty winds and some of these rain bands and just torrential rainfall. We'll have to watch that with time. So I am going to switch back to the satellite. We don't normally go back and forth like that, but I think it was worth really seeing some of that moisture. So let's look at Grace. Hurricane hunters will be out there this afternoon, and we're getting the satellite information showing us not just the clouds, but actually the winds. The satellite can actually give us swaths of winds and not really seeing much of a closed center. But either way, still wind. We got still rainfall, and that's going to be the big threat with time. And we'll get some detail with that forecast coming up. So let's look at the forecast of our two systems. One here is 40 mile an hour. That's what we have with Fred right now. Current location here. The wind swath pretty tight around the center, but it's that moisture that we're really concerned with timing wise. So this is right now the latest update as we're doing this broadcast. Tomorrow morning, moving to that location there, and then with time, it looks like, getting into the evening hours, afternoon, evening hours, getting real close to the coastline, and that's where we're looking to have looking at the tropical storm force winds and get some of that storm surge, which we'll see here in a little bit. So that's the timing. We're going to have some impacts of that tropical moisture today and into tomorrow. And by the way, it's not just on the coast. Up towards central Alabama, even up into portions of northwest Georgia, getting into Tennessee and the mountains of North Carolina. All that moisture going to move in these areas, and that could produce some problems with time, because that's just a significant amount of rainfall. So really pay attention to some of those warnings as those come out, especially at night. You just can't see where water covers the road. You got to be real careful in those situations. So let's take a look at Grace. This is the situation, 40 miles an hour. Moving west-northwest at 16 miles an hour, impacting places of Puerto Rico, where we have that tropical storm warning out. Tropical storm warning out for portions of Dominican Republic as well. Tropical storm watch out for portions of Haiti as well as this progresses onward. So just tropical downpours, wind, could see some mudslides, could see some big impacts in some of these areas. Once again, just like we did with Fred, let's look at Grace and the timing. For Puerto Rico right now, impacting the island and some of the elevations. Remember, the winds increase with height. So in those mountains, as you get higher elevations, you can see some of those higher winds. Something else to remember with some of those, that wind and the rain, getting some of the mudslides. Dominican Republic tomorrow morning, moving further towards the west, and then by 8 o'clock on Tuesday, getting close to the island of Cuba. So during the day tomorrow and into Tuesday, impacting Dominican Republic, Haiti, and even Cuba with time. Some uncertainty. There's quite a bit of uncertainty with time, because you start getting these systems over those mountains. We'll see what comes out on the other side. So we got to watch real close as this system gets closer to Florida and even out into the Gulf of Mexico with time. So we're going to watch that real close. Here are some of those impacts we've mentioned. One of them is the rainfall, and I'll go back to the storm surge with Fred. That's just an incredible amount of tropical moisture right there. In orange, 6 to 10 inches of rain. So portions of the Florida coast between Mobile and Tallahassee could see some of those that heavy rain. Remember, on the I-10 corridor here, getting into tonight, getting into Monday and Tuesday, just could be some dangerous conditions we'll have to watch. But remember, we talked about not just coastal. Look, as we get towards Montgomery and Atlanta, some of these areas 2 to 4 inches of rainfall, and then even if you get into Chattanooga, I'm getting into portions of you know, South Carolina, even to North Carolina. Look at Charlotte. All these areas up in here could see some places 4 to 6 inches of rain, maybe some places isolated with 10 inches of rain. So definitely significant in these areas. And I do want to show you, when we get into some of the areas of the islands we talked about with that heavy rain, 4 to 6 inches of rain, portions of Puerto Rico along the coast, maybe higher in some areas, maybe some areas getting up to 10 inches of rain. So just really dangerous. Listen to those local officials, listen to those warnings. Dominican Republic, same, 4 to 6 inches of rain, some places 6 to 8. Wouldn't be surprised by the time it's all said and done, some places getting 12 to even 15 inches of rainfall. But I do want to back up, and then we'll finish on this graphic as the last one, Dennis. You know, I really want to talk about not just Grace, where we can see some of those elevated tides, but we really get into Fred, and we got a brand new thing. That's why I really want to take the time to go back and look at it. This is brand new storm surge. We got a storm surge warning out for some areas that could get 2 to 4 feet of storm surge. So Indian Pass over to the Steinhatchee River, this area right here, I want to highlight that. Some places get 2 to 4 feet of storm surge. So I definitely wanted to go back. This is with Fred. Start seeing those elevated water levels along the coastline. Watch out for those roads. Listen to those local officials. If you're in one of those traditional, very low-lying spots, if your local officials tell you to get out of there, definitely listen to them. So that's the latest information we have on Fred and Grace, and we'll keep you posted as we get new information. We'll pass that on to you. This has been Ken Graham here at the National Hurricane Center.